death, and taxes. In the UK, there's good reason we're afraid of taxes, and so would you be when income tax is 40%. When most of us think of death, it often fills us with dread and fear. And for our ancestors, what happened after we shed our mortal coil was even more of a mystery than it is to us today. The gods of death held a special reverence. You could pray to Zeus to spare you from bad weather, and to Poseidon to make sure your ship completes its journey safely. But no amount of prayers could earn you any favours with death. Death is inevitable for all of us. Welcome to the mysteries of mythology, the gods of death. I don't know about you, but when I think about personifications of death, the first image that comes to my mind is the Grim Reaper. There aren't many figures as iconic when it comes to the idea of death. But where did this skeletal figure in dark robes carrying a scythe actually come from? And why is it the image most of us picture when we think of death? Let's dig into the story behind the Grim Reaper and explore other death gods from around the world. Depictions of the Grim Reaper are usually male, but that's not always the case. In countries like Spain, Italy, and France, death is often portrayed as a female, and these depictions vary a lot. Some show beautiful young women, others show ancient figures, and then there's everything in between. In medieval England and Germany, death took the form of a skeleton holding a scythe, gathering the souls of the dying. In Poland, death is also in skeletal form, but appears as an elderly woman dressed in white. The term Grim Reaper first popped up in English in 1847 in the Life Circle, which was partially translated from a German text of the same name. Well, in German, Der Lebenskreis by August Thuluck, published in 1841. We know the Grim Reaper is just one way death has been personified, but how did this specific image become so well known? For that, we need to rewind to the 14th century. In 1346, a mysterious disease arrived in Europe from the east, known as the bubonic plague, or the Black Death. Some say it wiped out between 20 to 75% of the global population. And that's a wide range, but it's due to inaccurate and inconsistent record keeping. Whatever number you put on it, a lot of people died. With so much death in everyday life, turning death into a humanoid figure may have been a coping mechanism. Images of animated skeletons date back to the 13th century, as seen in the legend of the 3 living and 3 dead. In this tale, 3 noblemen or kings encounter 3 animated skeletons who warn them about their wasteful and sinful lives, urging them to turn towards a life of righteousness. The skeleton represents the unavoidable event of death. Our bodies might decay, but bones remain, a final trace of the living. The dark robes are thought to come from the attire of religious figures during funeral rites, adding a sense of solemnity. Then there's a scythe. Why a farming tool of all things? A scythe is used to harvest crops, especially in autumn, a time symbolizing the end of a season, or in this case, the end of life. So the Grim Reaper with his scythe is mowing down the living, much like the plague did. An interesting fact about the scythe is that before the 14th century, farms were using the shorter sickle, but the invention of the scythe, if you excuse the pun, became viral. So the familiar imagery of skeletons associated with death and the growing popularity of the scythe helped to form the image of the Grim Reaper we know today. To truly understand figures like the Grim Reaper and why we've given death a face, we need to look at some of the death figures that came before. In Greek mythology, there are quite a few gods and spirits linked to death, but perhaps the closest match to the Grim Reaper is Thanatos. Thanatos was not a fearsome figure, but the serene and inevitable personification of death. As the child of Nyx, goddess of night, and Erebus, the personification of darkness, Thanatos brought a calm, natural end, one without violence or malice. Often depicted as a handsome winged figure, he represented the peaceful aspect of death, guiding souls to the afterlife with quiet compassion. In some later depictions, he appears as a winged boy, similar to Cupid, holding an inverted torch symbolizing life gently extinguished. Unlike other death deities who thrive in chaos or vengeance, Thanatos' rule is rooted in cosmic order. His twin brother, Hypnos, god of sleep, often accompanied him, reinforcing the connection between sleep and gentle death. Obedient to the fates, Thanatos never acted prematurely, ensuring that each soul's end was both fated and respectful of life's natural course. Another Greek god we're probably all familiar with is Hades, the king of the underworld. Often misunderstood, Hades was actually one of the more reserved and fair-minded figures among the gods. As the eldest son of Kronos and Rhea, he was given the underworld after the Titans' defeat, ruling with a sense of justice that even the other gods respected. Despite the underworld's reputation, his realm wasn't a place of pure dread, but a final resting place for all souls, heroes, common folk, and wrongdoers alike. Hades' kingdom reflects his balanced nature, with the Elysium fields for the virtuous and Tartarus where the wicked face their punishments. While popular stories sometimes paint him as a dark, devilish figure, Hades was more of a cosmic custodian, maintaining the natural order of life and death. Beside him was his wife Persephone, who was well respected by both the living and the dead. Persephone is an example of where the death of people was associated with seasons. She originally represented the spring and nature, and depending on the version you read, she was either tricked or fell in love with Hades, joining him in the underworld during the dry, harsh months. In the northern parts of the Greco-Roman world, this story was later adapted to reflect winter as her time in the underworld, aligning with the colder, less fertile seasons there. However, in earlier versions, which were set closer to the equator, Persephone descended during summer. At that time, it was hot and dry, making it hard to grow crops. Another Greek god that's not often associated with death is Hermes. Hermes played the role of a psychopomp, a being that helps to transport the recently deceased to the afterlife. His speed and ability to move between realms made him the perfect messenger, guiding souls from the world of the living to the land of the dead. In Greek mythology, we also find Hecate. Hecate isn't actually what's normally considered a goddess, as she was a titan, but titans are just gods from an earlier generation. She was the goddess of boundaries and crossroads, which allowed her to open gates between worlds. Like Hermes, she helped guide souls, lighting the way with her torch-bearing nymphs, the Lampades, which Zeus gave her as a reward for siding with the Olympians in the Titanomachy. And then there's Chiron, the ferryman who carries souls across the river Styx to the realm of the dead, and Cerberus, the fierce guard dog with 3 heads who kept the dead from escaping. We also have the Keres, who represented violent death, and the Erinyes, spirits of vengeance, all figures who made the Greek underworld a place filled with mystery, rules, and plenty of powerful guardians. In Norse mythology, we meet another of our female rulers of death, Hel. Just as the Greek underworld name is also the name of its ruler, Hel presides over the cold, misty realm underworld, appropriately named Hel or Helheim. It's designated for those who did not die in battle. As the daughter of Loki, the trickster god, and the giantess Angrboda, her heritage is as layered as her appearance. One side of her face is pale and alive, while the other is decayed, symbolizing the threshold between life and death. Helheim is a solemn shadow expanse where the dishonored and those who died of illness or age find their place. Hel reigns without malice or favor, embodying the inevitability of death. Her rule is not one of punishment or reward, but of quiet order, reflecting the Norse view of the afterlife as a continuation rather than a judgment. Hel stands as a natural force, ensuring that each soul finds its place in the world beyond. Then there's Odin, the Allfather and king of the Norse gods, who isn't normally thought of as a death god, but gains the connection as he oversees the dead in Valhalla. Odin would send his servant warrior maidens, the Valkyries, mortal women with magical armour, to choose the greatest warriors who died on the battlefield. Odin, known for his wisdom and strategic foresight, chooses the bravest soldiers from the battlefield to join the ranks of the Einherjar in Valhalla. These warriors live and train there, awaiting the call to fight alongside the gods during Ragnarok, the world's final battle. In fact, the name Valkyries means choosers of the slain. But before arriving in Valhalla, one other god got the first pick of warriors, Freyja, or as some have instructed me to say, Freyja. No one exactly knows why Freyja had this honour. Some argue it was part of a deal in her arranged marriage. Those selected by Freyja joined her in her realm, Folkvangr. While most stories talk of the Norse warriors dreaming of being in the halls of Valhalla, Folkvangr was equally noble, and the warriors chosen to go there were no less than those in Valhalla. We have one other mythical being related to death in Norse mythology. This was more of a folk character than a god that was widely believed in. Just like the more recent expression of going to Davy Jones's locker when you die at sea, there was also a Norse expression of being caught in Ran's net. Ran, along with her husband Aegir, personified the sea. They had 9 daughters who represented the waves. Using her giant net, she gathered the souls of the drowned. Interestingly, Ran's name in Old Norse translates to theft, robbery, or utter plunder, which paints a darker picture of who she was. Some sources suggest she didn't just collect those who drowned, but may have actively taken them, dragging them to the depths with her immense net. Tuni, the Finnish god of the underworld, ruled over Tunela, a shadowy yet tranquil realm where souls found eternal rest. Unlike the underworld of other mythologies, Tunela is a place of peace, reflecting the Finnish reverence for death as a natural part of life. Tuni himself, a figure both feared and respected, embodies the inevitability of death. Alongside him are his wife, Tunita, and their children, whose roles highlight the communal nature of the Finnish afterlife, where familiar figures guide the departed. At times, Tuni interacted with other gods or heroes seeking wisdom. Though solemn, Tuni and his family were not malevolent. They served as essential custodians, maintaining cosmic balance between life and death, and providing a comforting presence in the world beyond. In Slavic mythology, we meet Morana, who has many other names such as Mazana, Marina, or Marzina, depending on the region. She embodies death and the chill of winter. This goddess of death, darkness, and the cold seasons is often depicted as a pale, dark-haired woman dressed in either black or white robes, sometimes appearing skeletal or carrying symbols of winter like frost or snow. Morana's tradition nearly vanished after being banished by Polish clergy in 1420. However, it has persisted to the present day. On March 21st, an effigy of Morana is created from straw and either burned or drowned to symbolize the death of winter. In Slavic mythology, Chernobog, meaning black god in Old Church Slavonic, is a feared figure symbolizing darkness, misfortune, and malevolence. As a bringer of calamity, he stands in stark opposition to Belobog, the white god, who embodies light and goodness. Chernobog's influence is particularly acknowledged during the night and winter months, times when the darkness prevails. Depictions of Chernobog vary, but he is often portrayed as a foreboding, shadowy figure, embodying the mysteries of the night. In some rituals, he absorbs curses and ill wishes, taking on the community's evil to maintain balance. In Norway, the grim face of death was embodied by Pesta, known as the Plague Hag. Like the Grim Reaper, she was the personification of the Black Death that swept through Norway. This elderly woman was said to wear a black hood and a dark red skirt, always carrying her rake. Where Pesta roamed, disease and death followed. According to the legend, she would travel from village to village, leaving sickness and death in her wake. If she arrived carrying her rake, it was a grim sign that some would survive. But if she came sweeping the ground with her broom, it meant complete devastation for the entire village. Pesta was often said to arrive at a village by boat. This is probably a symbolic reference to how the plague itself had reached Norway, on rat-infested ships and boats. Giltine, the Lithuanian personification of death, has a formidable yet nuanced presence in mythology. Originally depicted with a nurturing aspect, she represented a peaceful transition from life to death, a natural force guiding souls onwards. But over time, her image grew darker, influenced by foreign myths, transforming her into a sterner, skeletal figure, cloaked in dark robes and wielding a scythe, much like the Grim Reaper. Giltine's duties extended beyond mere claiming souls. She ensures each death is timely and just, embodying the natural order. Her haunting presence serves as a reminder of mortality, urging people to lead righteous lives in hopes of a peaceful passing. In Celtic mythology, we have Ankou, who appeared across Britain, especially in Wales and Ireland. Ankou is sometimes described as a shadow, but also described as a Grim Reaper-like figure, a skeleton dressed in dark robes with a wide-brimmed hat hiding most of his face. With scythe in hand, he rides a black coach pulled by black horses, collecting souls as he goes, often followed by ghostly figures who help him gather the dead. Stories about Ankou's origins vary. Some say he was once a prince who lost a hunting game to death and was cursed to roam the earth, collecting souls forever. Others describe him as a servant of death who looks after graveyards and guides lost souls. In some regions, each parish was thought to have its own Ankou, and the role passed to the last person who died each year, or in some versions, the first to die. He gathers souls tirelessly, hoping that one day his debt to death will finally be repaid and his own spirit will finally rest. In a stranger version of the story, Ankou is said to be the first child of Adam and Eve, known as Son of the Sea, connecting him to Mictlantecuhtli, ruler of the otherworld in Irish mythology. Manannan, part of the Tuatha De Danann, watched over the hidden world of gods and the dead, concealed from human sight by a thick mist. Manannan travelled in a magical self-guided boat, dividing his realm among the Tuatha De Danann. A more popular figure was the Morian, one of the most powerful figures in Irish mythology. The Morian is known as the goddess of war, fate, and prophecy, and she is often linked to death on the battlefield. She appears as an omen, sometimes as a crow, other times as a mysterious woman by the river washing the bloody clothes of the soldier fated to die. To her allies, she would inspire or frenzy troops before battle, and her enemies she would create chaos and fear. In one of the tales, her scream alone forced 100 of the enemy troops into the sea to their deaths. If a warrior saw her before battle, it was a bad omen that their end was near. The Morian is sometimes viewed as a trio of sisters: Bav, who embodies the chaos of war, Macha, linked to the land's protection, and occasionally Nevin or Anand. This triadic nature allowed her to personify the fury, fate, and the mystery surrounding life and death in battle. In Welsh mythology, Arwan ruled as the god of the dead and the keeper of Anon, a mysterious realm viewed as a place of peace and eternal rest rather than torment. His domain was a paradise, abundant in food and free from age and illness, presenting a comforting view of the afterlife. Known for his honour and fairness, Arwan was not only a guide but also a protector, ensuring the dead found solace. He was a master of magic and surrounded by magical creatures, most famously the white, red-eared hounds, whose haunting howls filled the autumn and winter skies, reflecting his influence over the natural cycles. Beyond guiding souls, Arwan was also a figure of retribution, believed to judge those who strayed morally, offering correction as needed while still securing peace for those in his care. The Americas have their own unique characters when it comes to the personification of death. In Mexico, we meet Santa Muerte, Our Lady of Holy Death. Over the last century, she's attracted a large following, developing into a religious movement in her own right. Santa Muerte appears as a female skeleton draped in a long robe, often holding a scythe. But unlike the Grim Reaper, she's usually dressed in bright, vibrant colours that reflect her dual nature. She's both feared and celebrated as a figure of death. Further south in Brazil, Argentina, Colombia and Paraguay, there's San La Muerte, or Saint Death. Like Santa Muerte, he's skeletal and carries a scythe, but he's depicted as male. While both figures have sparked tension with the Catholic Church, which views them as incompatible with Christian beliefs, San La Muerte is still widely seen as a saint in South America. In other parts of Mexico and Guatemala, people also speak of San Pascualto, the king of the graveyard. As you might expect, he's depicted as a skeleton, in robes, and often wears a crown showing his rule over the dead. In Haiti, voodoo brings us another famous figure, Baron Samedi, a lively spirit tied to both death and fertility. In Haitian voodoo, spirits, or loa, are grouped into families, and the Guide family represents death and fertility, led by none other than the flamboyant Baron Samedi. Also known as Baron Lacroix and Baron Samitier, Samedi has a look all of his own: a skull-painted face, top hat, black tailcoat, and a fancy cane. He looks more like he's ready for a party than a funeral, and in many ways he is. Haitian funerals are both a time of mourning and celebration, and Samedi's style reflects this blend. He reminds us of death's inevitability and the need to embrace life in full. But don't let his wild side fool you. Baron Samedi still takes his responsibilities very seriously. He's the one who digs graves and welcomes souls to the afterlife. And here's where it gets interesting. If Baron Samedi decides not to dig a grave for someone, that person simply cannot die. No curse or injury will take them. He's also known to heal the gravely ill or injured, holding the power to both end and restore life. Alongside him is his equally bold wife, Maman Brigitte. She's got a fiery personality and a taste for rum mixed with chili. As the protector of cemeteries and tombs, Mama Brigitte has a unique background. She's often linked to Brigid, an Irish goddess of healing, which might explain her depiction as a pale woman with red hair. Haitian voodoo mixes African and European influences, so Mama Brigitte's character combines elements of Saint Brigid and even Mary Magdalene. This duality shows up in her nature too. She's both fierce and saintly, depending on who you ask. Baron Samedi and Mama Brigitte have an adopted son, Guide Nebo. Guide Nebo joined the family after his tragic death and became the patron of those who die young. He's usually seen with a bottle of white rum infused with medicinal herbs, symbolizing his skill as a healer. Like his parents, he's a spirited character, known for guiding souls to their final resting place. In Aztec mythology, Mictlantecuhtli ruled over Mictlan, the lowest, most desolate level of the underworld. His name simply translates to Lord of Mictlan. Unlike the realms for warriors and mothers who died in childbirth, Mictlan was the final resting place for most souls, and the journey there was treacherous. The deceased faced what some believed to be a 4-year ordeal, navigating obstacles like rivers and mountains, a symbolic reflection of life's hardships. Mictlantecuhtli himself was portrayed with a skeletal body, adorned with owl feathers and a necklace of human eyeballs, embodying decay yet wielding undeniable authority. More than a mere overseer of the dead, he guarded the bones, the last traces of life, signifying his role in the life-death cycle. Worshipping him often involved bloodletting and offerings, acts intended to gain his favour and ensure safe passage for the departed. Ruling alongside him was his wife, Mictlantecuhtli, also known as the Lady of the Dead. She guarded the bones of the deceased and presided over festivals that honoured the dead, a role that likely influenced today's Dia de los Muertos, a Day of the Dead celebrations that involved granting souls temporary passage back to the living world to visit loved ones. With her skeletal form and headdress made of flayed skin, she embodied the Mesoamerican views on mortality and remembrance. The Maya had their own death deities and a complex underworld called Xibalba. Here, Hun Kame, or One Death, and Vakub Kame, or Seven Deaths, reigned as fearsome rulers. Alongside them, Apuch, the god of death, presided over Midnal, the deepest and most ominous part of Xibalba, associated with decay and despair. Known for his skeletal form adorned with bells and often accompanied by owls, Apuch brought disease and was feared and was a herald of death. Xibalba wasn't just an underworld, it was a place of trials where the deceased faced challenges set by the gods, including Apuch's ominous trials in Midnal. Yet it wasn't all torment. Xibalba was also a place of transformation where the soul was tested and purified. To the Maya, death wasn't an end but a vital part of life's cycle. The trials in Xibalba were seen as a necessary rite of passage to strengthen and prepare the soul. The Mesoamerican gods, with their blend of honor and awe, reflected the belief that death is not just a final destination, but a journey in itself. Supay, in the traditional beliefs of the Andean region, particularly among the Inca and neighboring cultures, ruled Uku Pacha, the underworld that served both as a resting place for the dead and a source of precious metals. Known as the personification of death, Supay was depicted as a formidable figure embodying both the darkness and dangers of the subterranean realm he commanded. His presence instilled both fear and respect, balancing the roles of protection and retribution. With his host of Supay Kuna spirits, he enforced his will, ensuring harmony between the world of the living and the afterlife, a vital part of the Andean natural order. In Japanese mythology, death is tightly woven with creation, especially in the story of Izanagi and Izanami, the sibling deities. These two were among the first gods that had the task of forming the very first landmass. Their link to death began when Izanami died, which drove Izanagi to make a perilous journey to Yomi, the underworld, to bring her back. When he found her, she was hidden in the shadows, and she told him that, having eaten the food of Yomi, she was bound to stay there. Izanami tried to gain permission to leave by morning, but while she rested, Izanagi couldn't resist. He desired to see her. Lighting his way with his comb as a torch, he approached her in the dark. But when he finally saw her, he was horrified. His once beautiful wife had become a decaying figure, her flesh eaten away and teeming with maggots. Izanagi's reaction was not exactly noble. In a panic, he fled and sealed the entrance to Yomi with a massive boulder, trapping her in the land of the dead. Furious, Izanami sent spirits after him in a rage. But with the entrance sealed, the realms of the living and the dead were separated forever. This act marked the start of Izanagi as the god of life and Izanami as the goddess of death. Heartbroken and vengeful, Izanami declared she would claim 1,000 lives each day. In response, Izanagi vowed to create 1,500 new lives daily to counter her demand for lives. In East Asian mythologies, we find Enma, a powerful figure ruling over the underworld. His name varies across Buddhist traditions, but in Japanese Buddhism, he's called Enma, often seen as the king of hell. Enma presides over the underworld rulers and decide if someone's sins warrant eternal punishment. He's a character we'll encounter in even more detail when we head over to Chinese deities. Another figure some might recognize is Shinigami. The word Shinigami translates to death god or reaper in English, and these spirits are said to lure humans closer to death. But they are far more than mere harbingers. In Japanese folklore, Shinigami have a complex role, guiding souls from life to death and overseeing the spiritual balance of existence. They determine when a person's time has come and escort them to the afterlife, a role influenced by Japan's unique views on death and reincarnation. In some stories, Shinigami influence people's actions by possessing them, especially in tales from Japan's Edo period. Overall, Shinigami aren't entirely benevolent or malevolent. Their purpose is ambivalent. While they sometimes seem to lead individuals towards death, they're simply keeping the cycle of life intact. In this way, they're reflections of life's inevitabilities, neither cruel nor kind, but rather impartial. Legends often portray them in various forms, from ominous cloaked figures to abstract shapes, each an emblem of the mystery that surrounds death itself. As they ferry souls from the earthly realm, Shinigami allow a final reflection on life, gently preparing the spirit for the unknown journey that lies ahead. Chinese mythology is filled with countless deities, each with a unique role, so covering them all would take forever. Since we've mentioned Enma from Chinese tradition, let's meet the Chinese counterpart, King Yan. King Yan rules over the underworld and is known by many names, overseeing the realm of the dead. In Chinese mythology, the afterlife is divided among 10 kings, with King Yan acting as the head judge. The 10 kings preside over the 8 or 10 courts of hell, judging each soul based on the life they lead. After King Yang delivers his verdict, souls pass through the different courts to face punishments that fit their actions. King Yang is often depicted as a towering figure with a fierce red face and a heavy beard. The underworld also has its own gods, the ox-head Ni Tu and the horse-face Ma Mia. While they might look a bit strange, these two have serious roles. They prevent souls from escaping, guiding new souls to the underworld, and serve as messengers in the courts of hell. They're also well-known characters in the classic tale Journey to the West. Then there's Meng Po, the goddess of forgetfulness. Meng Po resides in the underworld, preparing souls for reincarnation. As souls reach the bridge of forgetfulness, Meng Po serves them with the 5-flavored tea of forgetfulness, a special brew that erases memories of past lives, allowing them to reincarnate with a fresh start. This ritual is like a spiritual cleanse, cleaning any old regrets, sins, or fears. Meng Po's story has a sorrowful twist. After her husband's death, she carried her grief into the afterlife, unable to move on or reincarnate because she couldn't let go. Over time, she found a purpose in helping other souls release their pain, offering them a chance to reincarnate free of past burdens, a release she couldn't find for herself. Some stories even tell of souls who refused her tea and went into the next lives remembering past events. These cases often led to strange situations, like babies who could speak of past lives. Meng Po is usually depicted as an elderly woman, often called Old Lady Meng. Her compassionate yet bittersweet role in Chinese lore makes her unforgettable. In Visaya mythology, Siddhartha is the god who determines the lifespan of every mortal, overseeing death as an essential part of fate. From his vantage point on Mount Madhas, the highest peak in Panay, he watches over humanity with a sacred duty. On a divine tree atop this mountain, he inscribes each person's name and destiny, symbolizing his omniscience and authority over the cycle of life and death. Siddhartha's presence is a reminder of the intertwining realms of the mortal and divine, shaping the natural flow of existence. In Korean folklore, Jousing Saja plays the role of a divine emissary, escorting souls from the living world of Jousong, a realm similar to purgatory. His name, meaning messenger of the world of the dead, reflects his duties as a bridge between realms. Unlike the Grim Reaper's fearsome image, Jousing Saja is a bureaucratic figure with a celestial administration, ensuring that each soul complies with the cosmic laws. Compassionate yet impartial, he sees that each spirit moves to its proper place in the afterlife based on their earthly deeds. In Mesopotamian mythology, Ereshkigal reigned as a formidable queen of the underworld known as Erkala. Erkala was a place where all souls descended upon death, irrespective of their deeds in life, and Ereshkigal's authority was both absolute and unwavering. Her role is vividly illustrated in the myth of Inanna's descent to the underworld, where Ereshkigal presides over the trial and ultimate death of her sister Inanna, the goddess of love and war. This myth reveals her dual nature. Though a strict and implacable ruler, she also upheld the realm's laws with fairness. While Erkala was often depicted as dark and unyielding, it is also a place of transformation, where the dead undergo renewal. Ereshkigal's dominion, while foreboding, is linked to the earth's fertility through the underworld's life-giving waters. So her role was essential in maintaining the delicate cosmic balance between life and death, embodying both the fearsome and the necessary aspects of existence. Nergal, another prominent Mesopotamian god, personified the fierce forces of war and pestilence, symbolizing the unavoidable cycle of life and death. As both a war deity and a god of disease, he was the harsh force maintaining cosmic balance, embodying the dual nature that instilled respect for life's end. Serving as Ereshkigal's consort, Nergal's authority extended deep into the realm of the dead. He was depicted wielding a mace or a sword, with lions and flames at his side, symbols that underscore the dominion over death's inevitability and the necessity of respecting it. In Zoroastrian mythology, Angra Mainyu, or Ahriman, stood for darkness and destruction, directly opposing Ahura Mazda, the god of light and wisdom. Angra Mainyu wasn't just a force of decay and chaos. He actively sought to unravel Ahura Mazda's creation by spreading lies and discord. Zoroastrian belief held that for every force of good, an opposite force existed, challenging people to stay on the path of truth despite the forces of deception and corruption pulling them away. In Yoruba mythology, Iku personified death itself, embodying an inevitable and impartial end that upholds cosmic balance. Both revered and feared, Iku is seen as a necessary guide in the soul's journey to the afterlife. His arrival isn't arbitrary. Iku only comes at the appointed time, decided by Olorun, the supreme god, and the Orishas, the deities who ensure life's predestined course. This underlines the Yoruba's belief in destiny and the natural cycle of life and death. Yoruba people honor Iku through rituals and ceremonies, reflecting a respect for life's transitions and the desire for peace in the face of mortality. In Egyptian mythology, death comes with a whole cast of gods and spirits to help guide souls to the afterlife. One of the key figures is Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification who oversees the mummification and embalming process, protects graves, and leads souls through the underworld. Known for overseeing the embalming process, Anubis ensures the body's preservation, an essential step in allowing the deceased to live on in the afterlife. Anubis acts as both protector and judge, guiding the souls to the Hall of Ma'at, where the sacred weighing of the heart ceremony awaits. In this ritual, Anubis places a feather on one side of the scales, symbolizing Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice, and the heart of the deceased on the other. Only those whose hearts are as light as a feather, unburdened by wrongdoing, may proceed to Osiris's realm, joining him in eternal peace. For those whose hearts are too heavy, Anubis summons Amit, the devourer of the dead, a fearsome creature assembled from Egypt's most dangerous animals. She has the head of a crocodile, the front of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. Amit's role is to devour the hearts of the unworthy, condemning them to what the Egyptians saw as a second death, a fate of endless unrest. Some legends say that these souls were cast into a lake of fire where they would remain for eternity. The thought of Ammit alone was terrifying, not just because of her monstrous form, but for the grim fate she represented. Osiris was once a mortal king of Egypt, revered for his wisdom and justice. But jealousy drove his brother Set to betray and brutally murder him, dismembering his body into 14 pieces and scattering them across Egypt. Isis, his devoted sister wife, painstakingly reassembled him using her magic, bringing him back to life. This act transformed Osiris into the god of the afterlife, embodying the cycle of life, death, and renewal. Now, as a compassionate judge of the dead, he presides over the souls with fairness, promising rebirth in the afterlife, a belief mirrored by the Nile's yearly flood, which brought life to Egypt's barren land. In both life and death, Osiris's influence reached across Egypt's culture, inspiring rituals and even shaping kingship itself, as pharaohs were seen as his earthly embodiments. As we've explored today, death deities across cultures aren't necessarily all evil. In fact, most of them are protectors and guides, helping the living and the dead navigate the inevitable journey that awaits us all. These figures help bridge the gap between life and death, providing both comfort and caution in the face of the unknown. Do you know any more death deities, or have a different view on what we've explored? Let me know in the comments.